The protagonist woke on a day like any other. A warm and temperate sun cast shadows over his face as the bordering symmetrical houses laid evenly across the desert. Dryly, he spoke to the writer. "What do you have planned for me today?" he said half-heartedly. His yearning to know his life's path had led him to this voice, one he found in his TV speakers, in his inner ear, and in the words pasted to his back by bullies as a child. He found him, the creator of his world. When he listened closely, the typing of his next thought could be heard beneath room tones, like a repeated tick of a clock, always on time, always sure of the next moment. The protagonist had fought it for many years after this revelation. He had screamed and begged at the sky for a silent life. All he wanted were answers, yet these answers only raised more questions. A path built by a guiding voice, yet one he knew was not his own. Was it better, he thought, to be alone in this path? A soul separate from the world, marring the landscape with tiptoed remarks each day, braving a life built from the confusion of living it? Or was it a more peaceful path, to hear your thoughts typed out before you, recite which was laid neatly on your bedside, and surrender to this gift, a handshake of gratitude, to say, "I will let you move me, let you live through me. I will be the vessel for your journey. I am not the thinker, yet I will feel these thoughts. I am not the maker, yet I will find my way through this making, see these changes, and fill myself with their memory." He did not know the answer, yet he was tired, and today of all days was a day for surrender, a day for endings that he could not fight. The creator had deemed it a worthy plot point, he heard, to end the story here. The protagonist knew that there would not be much time left. He did not know if the story would end at dusk or overtop a clear sunset. He did not know if it would be him that died, or the world itself would cease to be when the typewriter exclaimed its last remark, yet he knew an ending would find him. This week began with this notion. The finiteness of this story seemed clear, born from the same voice he had since wished he had never discovered. He had asked, "Why? Why must this end?" and had only received a vacancy resembling a trembling uncertainty. He knew this feeling, the doubt. It had pervaded his life, and in this moment the Creator did not seem so distant, so sure of himself as he always had. "I don't know," the Creator whispered, "but I know this must end, for I have nothing more to say." The day went on as normal, a goodbye to the protagonist's dog, who would later be walked by his neighbor while he was gone for work. The protagonist did not have a family, for his parents had died, and he had not taken a wife or had children. Work had consumed his days, creating charts, data entries for a government facility which tracked pharmaceutical sales and growth. Before he discovered the voice of the Creator, he had dreams of rebellion, of bursting this daily malaise at the seams in an extravagant fashion, and finding a more romantic way forward, a life of meaning. Yet, when the voice was discovered, and the grief that ensued had followed and been wringed from his tear ducts after so many months, he no longer had this dream. For he knew whatever was written was not for this dream to be manifest, but simply for it to be had, like a thick pillow to accompany the end of a heavy day. These dreams of a life more fertile than his own were his companion, not to be made real, but to be kept alongside his life. A life of numbers, a life of smooth edges and pinholes, a life that was lived. He'd always been here. I would never be anywhere else. He entered the office at his usual time, greeting the workers in small talk comments of the extra nice weather and coming holiday. A day the protagonist knew would never come, yet it comforted this moment and his coworkers all the same. As he typed his report and the hours passed, he felt the familiar presence of the creator, typing away just as he did, creating his thoughts, when and where others would enter, and from what room, what thoughts would pass by in his mind, his urges or regrets, and his general sense of boredom. A normal day. This typing was ever present, and yet, just like tinnitus or any pervasive sound, it would often fade into the fabric of his world, not intruding, for it never was separate from it, and so a normal day was met with a normal end. A shift which clocked out just as it had for years now, his brown suit and slacks wrinkled at the same seams, those made by his comfortable positions in his office chair, a part of him that he had not noticed, but a part all the same. When the creator reached for another sheet of paper, he could not find one. He had sworn that he had bought enough to finish this last chapter before his editing process began, yet his dimly lit studio was empty of his usual supply. He found himself in his basement, passing by old boxes of kids' toys long forgotten by his now adult children, and his wife's many cookbooks she no longer looked for, as the worthwhile recipes had long since been memorized. Within the dust and slice of his past life was a pile of old manuscripts, and within it, a blank pile of thin paper. His favorite kind, the right fit for his typewriter, which had been given to him by his father in his later years. The paper was thin enough to not feel the heaviness of beautiful material that could be sullied by empty words, yet finely crafted enough to soak up the writer's ink with ease. As he grabbed a new stack and headed upstairs once again, passing his wife, who was rewatching one of her favorite movies, he paused and smiled. Their life had been one of joy, small in its scale and scope, but deep in its richness. In these later years, as his childlike joy for creation had re-entered his daily routines, he was grateful of this kind of day. Uneventful, yet the kind of event that would be thought of in passing through rose-colored glasses at a later date. He gave her a kiss in passing and continued up the stairs to his study. The protagonist was not alone. He never had been. On his way home from work, the trees rustled like they did before an evening storm, common around these parts during the spring. Suddenly, the urge to turn down the street next to his home overcame him. The typing in his periphery seemed to grow louder, and he followed suit with ease. He still could not truly know the relationship that was had here, for even his resistance to these typed words seemed written within the very script he had become aware of. Yet his life was lived the same way it always had been, and this struggle seemed to only exist in his mind, for the external world was filled with as much mundane normality as it always had been. On this street, the creator noticed a change in light as the storm grew in strength. He was given the urge to write of a bombastic ending, one in which the world of his creation tore apart and revealed a deeper truth, that the writer and the protagonist were one and the same, that the protagonist's struggle with these internal thoughts was not a foreign force subsuming his life, only for him to surrender to the voice's whim, but his very creation, a way to move through life with piqued interest. The struggle somehow made it all real. And even if his outward existence was dull in all the ways we humans wished to avoid most, this inner struggle with whose will was being followed had been eventful enough to give the story a worthy continuation. And so the creator thought to himself, what was the point of this storm? Would an eventual end need external validation to feel appropriate? Appropriate for whom? He knew, just like many of the manuscripts before, that this story would end up in a box, someplace below his home, unlabeled and unseen with the ones before. And yet still, the idea of an audience was a constant source of continued speculation, a point of comparison to create decisions he did not know how to make. As he wrote the ending, he found himself let down by its sudden appearance. Even though it had been planned in his mind for weeks, he could not see a further purpose in its summation. The protagonist's will for truth would turn itself on its head. He would continue driving past the point of internal direction as the storm grew further, and suddenly the clicking and clacking of the typewriter would cease. He would not know at first if it was only inaudible because of the beating storm across the windshield, or if this presence had grown so interlinked with himself that it seemed to truly be gone. Yet he continued to drive all the same. A storm worth weathering, he thought, for reasons he had not created or entertained. An end to a normal day, by means not his own, but an end all the same. A worthy time, a life in its place, a new street in the same town, the same neighborhood which housed his unseen hopes, those tucked into bed beside him each night, cradling his doubts with a small smile. The crumpled paper reached a final word. Peace. Another story had been told, but not read, written, but not remembered, a compulsion behind the creator's understanding, when he still did not understand. The end.